time I'm presenting and I'm seated. I'm not used to this, but we are being recorded. So if you struggle to hear me, please just move forward and okay, so we did have another speaker before me. So if someone walks into the room, I think we should just check if it is the first speaker. But let me start. Okay, so I have already received the introduction. Should we just check?
And it's not here. It's already been tracked and he's missing the way.
Okay. Okay, so I think there are no trends in international maths and science study. We are all familiar with it. What you might not know is South Africa is one of the worst performing countries in TIMSS. We have been the bottom two in maths and science for the last couple of TIMSS rounds. TIMSS 2015, TIMSS 2011, TIMSS 2015, TIMSS 2019. South Africa is performing poorly in both mathematics and science. Okay, so I think most of you know how TIMSS work. So there are TIMSS points. They have less than 400 is low, 400 to 475 is middle, 475 to 550 is high, and then you have advanced, where you have countries like Singapore and so. Now, South Africa, if you have the low benchmark, so low benchmark 400, if you have the low benchmark, you have quite basic mathematical skills. Now, in South Africa, only 41% of learners have acquired basic mathematical skills. Okay, so this is, of course, devastating to see. So it's imperative to look at what can we do to improve mathematics performance. I have to say, in terms of courses on mathematics and science, I focus on mathematics. My specialization is mathematics education. Similar studies can be done, of course, for science, where South Africa is also last or second to last in TIMSS 2019. Okay, so in addition to firstly seeing South Africa is performing poorly in TIMSS, we also struggle with fractions. So literature has shown South Africa a problem with fractions in South African schools, not only South Africa, other countries, of course, as well. So there's some literature supporting all of this. Okay, so what have we done? So there's something called MERLO. It stands for Meaning, Equivalence, Reusable Learning Objectives. Now, MERLO, before myself and my colleague, sorry, let me show you the first slide. This research was done by myself and my doctoral student, Lydia Adesanya. She obtained her doctoral degree based on MERLO, on what we've done. So she could not be here. After obtaining a doctoral degree in South Africa, she now has a postdoctoral in Canada. So excellent, excellent student. I wish she could have been here today. So what we have done with MERLO, before we brought it to South Africa, it was only used in Italy, Australia, a couple of the Netherlands, about 5 other countries. So what happened is I visited Australia. I visited Dr. Theodosia Prodromo, a mathematics education specialist in Australia, and she worked on MERLO in Australia. She showed me how it works. I brought it to South Africa. I was then allocated a doctoral student, and I thought, let my doctoral student take MERLO into South African schools and let's see if it works. So how MERLO works, there's 4 quadrants. So what you would do is you would have a mathematical fraction, let's say 1/2. So then you have 4 statements. There are 4 quadrants. Q1 is where you put something that has meaning equivalence. So 1/2 is a half, 50%. You have some picture or something that shows half, meaning equivalence. Now Q1 also have surface similarity. Surface similarity means if you show the fraction 1/2, surface similarity would be 3/4, 5/6, something that in surface looks similar to what you are showing. Okay, so there's 2 things. Meaning equivalence is the meaning the same, and surface similarity just doesn't look the same. Meaning if it's a fraction 1/2, you know, if you present something 3/4, 5/6, it looks the same. So quadrant 1 has same meaning, same similarity, surface similarity. So that is the easy quadrant, so we don't use it in MERLO. You will see Q1 we're not using. Q2 has meaning equivalence. So if it's 1/2, meaning equivalence, you can have a circle and you can color half the circle. Meaning equivalence, but it will not have surface similarity. So the circle looks different to 1/2. Then we have quadrant number 3. Oh, it's covered there a bit. Okay, but quadrant number 3 is the opposite. There's no meaning equivalence, the meaning is different, but surface similarity. Yes, it'd be nice if that can. Thank you. Okay, so quadrant 3, that has no meaning equivalence, but surface similarity. So that would be like 3/4. The meaning is completely different, it's 3/4, but it looks the same. It's a fraction. Then Q4 has neither. No similar meaning, it doesn't look similar at the surface. So what are we interested in MERLO? So Q1 we don't use, I said it's too easy, but we are interested in Q2. So we want students to identify what's similar in meaning. Okay, so let's go to, okay, before an example, I will go to an example now. We just have to look at a methodology. Here's the countries I'm looking for. So MERLO has been implemented, Italy I mentioned, so here, Australia where I learned it, Canada, Israel, that's of course Ron Kennedy, well-known statistician Ron Kennedy did it in MERLO, and the Netherlands. Okay, so and like I said, we were the first to bring it to Africa. Okay, so let's first look at the methodology. Now, the theoretical framework, it's the theory of didactic transposition. If you have questions about that, you will have to email my doctoral student. The email address is on the last slide. I am more, I see myself as a practical researcher. She's more the theoretical paradigms and methodologies and all these things. And it was her doctoral study. So I cannot necessarily explain everything about how the theory of didactic transposition was incorporated in the study. But of course, she'll have her contact details. Same with the paradigm. But where I can answer questions, of course, it was participating action research. We went into schools, we had workshops, we got teachers involved. It was grade 8, grade 9 teachers. We showed them MERLO. We explained this is how MERLO works. This is how you create a MERLO Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 item. They sat, all the teachers created MERLO items. They took it into the class. We observed the lessons. So it was very participatory. There were also some interviews, focus group discussions afterwards. How did you find MERLO? So we had field note observations. You can see a lot of data gathering techniques. It was a doctoral study. So we did everything we could think of, and why for triangulation. Okay, so data analysis, thematic analysis, it was mostly qualitative in nature, lesson observation, interviews, workshops, PAR. Okay, but let's get to a MERLO item. So MERLO, so I did not mention TS stands for target statement. So target statement is what you want to teach, the question of the day. So let's say 1/2, so that's block A, the TS. You want to teach fractions. Today, your target statement is 1/2. Now what you do, what you'll see in MERLO, you've got two Q2 items, because we're interested in Q2, with the meaning equivalence, but not surface similarity, because surface similarity is too obvious. We are interested, can students identify Q2, meaning equivalence? So typically we have two Q2 items. We have a shape, half shaded, and we have a decimal for the other Q2, 0.5. So we want learners to identify those two. Then, of course, to throw them off. We have a Q3 item. So Q3 is similar in surface. You'll see 2/5, but of course, meaning is not the same. And then we have a Q4 where nothing is the same. Not surface similarity, no meaning equivalence, nothing. Okay, so this is what you want to give learners. And the idea is not just to ask them, where is the Q2 items? You must say, where are the Q2 items? And there's two instructions. Second instruction, what are your thoughts that made you think, that guided you to this? Now, in these thoughts that guided their decisions, they can refer to Q3 and Q4, where they can say, okay, Q3 is similar in surface, but not meaning, and Q4 is not similar in any sense. So they can talk about Q3 and Q4 in their thought process, but they have to identify the two Q2 items. Okay, so of course, this presentation is on fractions, but because it was a doctoral study, my doctoral student looked at all maths concepts, grade 8 and grade 9 in the South African curriculum. So we did MERLO for more than fractions. Why grade 8 and grade 9? Terms. So terms, you know that grade 4, 5 level and grade 8, 9 level, we decided to focus on the higher grades, grade 8, 9. And I'm saying grade 8, 9. Terms actually runs at grade 4 and grade 8. But South Africa does so poorly. Terms decided to evaluate South Africa on grade 5 and grade 9. So just take a moment just to think about that. All other countries, except there's one in Morocco, I think, all other countries in terms are evaluated grade 4, grade 8. South Africa and I think Morocco and one other African country does so poorly. We're evaluated grade 5 and grade 9, and we're still at the bottom of the terms results. Shocking, shocking. And that is why we are conducting studies. So that is why she took grade 8 and grade 9, because terms is actually on grade 8, but South African terms is on grade 9. So we thought both. Okay, so from focus groups, what did they think about MERLO, the teachers? So they said, I've learned how to convert and solve a fraction in different equivalents, different representations, equivalent representations. Okay, so they could see there are different ways to express things. And also, the next one is also talking about mathematical equivalence having the same meaning. So teachers were actually very enthusiastic, and they really understood the value of MERLO. Okay, so except for focus groups, we also evaluated learners' workbooks, where we sort of looked at what they wrote down, what they've done. You can see some responses where they've written down how they sort of got to, you know, where they got to in the end. So there's sort of the thinking process. The learners did very well. We have to say they really did very well. Teachers also used exit tickets. So the exit tickets, this is one example. You will see this was done already 2020. The study ran from 2020 to 2022. So sort of into 2023, a doctor will use about 3 years. And now we're presenting 2024. Okay, so exit tickets, we asked learners, write out new things you have learned today. Of course, what have you learned? Write out things you still don't understand, and write out things you would like to learn more about. And what's interesting, we stand in this exit ticket because all the learners in the classes, under question 2, write out 2 things you still don't understand. No learner wrote anything. Okay, meaning hopefully they understood, because the exit ticket is anonymous. So from that we gathered they understood, and they just sort of could identify what they had learned that day. Okay, so in discussions, so the implementation of the MERLO pedagogy, it is very different to what is typically done in South African classes, where typically we would just put up a fraction. I mean, you would, of course, put up a fraction, put up a half circle, put up 0.5 to show meaning equivalence. But now that was typically done in South African mathematics classrooms. But we introduced another element of surface similarity. And by bringing that in, you now have 4 quadrants. It sort of makes the thinking process more advanced for the learners. Okay, so we allowed learners to engage in discussion. So when they had the MERLO item, learners were encouraged to discuss the MERLO item. It was not individual. Some of it was individual, but we asked the teachers make a group discussions given the MERLO item per table. It's a table of 5 learners, have them discuss it. Okay, so what was really nice, that process, there was sharing of information, there was contrasting of information, prompting and refreshing each other's memories. What is Q1? What is Q2? What is Q3? What is Q4? Okay, so there were some challenges. Of course, this was new. Any new thing will have challenges. So some teachers said the order was forgotten. They forgot what's Q2, what's Q3, what's the order where surface similarity is meaning equivalence, and they quickly had to grab a paper and look it up. So yes, it was new. So they sometimes had to go and just check again. What's the difference between Q3 and Q4? But they said that the notes from our workshops, and they just use that to remind themselves. Okay, so recommendations for future research. So what was devastating, I wanted to tell you, our study was 2020, 2021, 2022 mostly. It was during COVID. So initially, we had 12 teachers who agreed to participate. So 12 teachers, we have about 50 learners in a classroom in South Africa. So, you know, we would have had a nice sample, 12 teachers and 12 times 50 learners. And then COVID came. And we wanted the workshops to be in person. We wanted participatory action research. We wanted people to come together. So we did not go online. So when we said, no, we want the workshops to be in person, it is participatory action research. It's important, we want this to be done in person. Only 5 teachers so opted to wear masks and come in person for the workshops. So, so the learners, we had about 5 times 50 learners at least. But we only had 5 teachers. So, I mean, that was just devastating, just having 5 teachers. So recommendations for future researchers, we do want to do this again in South African schools with more teachers this time. Again, using participatory action research, it really did help. Okay, and what else? Recommendations, we want some intensive professional training on the MERLO approach throughout South African schools. So we want to basically enlarge the study. Like I said, only 5 teachers. This needs to be done on a larger scale. Okay, so we would like to have professional development courses on MERLO, even online professional development. We still want to do PAR in the schools, of course, but we'll consider online because I mean the whole world is moving online. So we will at some point do online MERLO courses. Also, future recommendations. We would like to introduce MERLO to other African countries. So what is nice, this was done in South Africa. But I now have some doctoral students enrolled now with me this year, new students. One is from Botswana and one is from Ghana. So what happens at the University of Pretoria, we do get a lot of students from African countries. So we have a lot from Zimbabwe, Botswana and Ghana and Democratic Republic of Congo. So we've only done it in South Africa. I do want to find out if some of my new doctoral students would be willing to take this further into other African countries. We'd be very interested to do that. Okay, of course, just some references you saw throughout the presentation. Okay, so what I do want to say, MERLO. So I showed you MERLO for fractions today. But we have already published some things from the doctoral study. Okay, so the one here you can see we published in South African Journal of Education. I know it says South African Journal of Education. It is Web of Science accredited. Okay, so we published promoting formative assessment practices in senior phase classroom using MERLO. So I just quickly want to run through that study. Okay, so let's go back to the MERLO item. So MERLO is, of course, mostly used for formative assessment. So you want to, in class, put up a MERLO item, see what can they answer, what are they understanding, what are they not understanding. So you can, of course, use MERLO for summative assessment. So in an exam, final summative assessment, you can have a MERLO item. But our publication was how it was used as a formative assessment in the classrooms, because remember, we observed some of the classrooms, and that was formative assessment. Okay. Another publication, this was last year at the same conference. I enjoyed coming to this conference. Next year I will come again. Okay, so we did have proceedings in Future of Education last year. So this one was on teacher professional development on the design of MERLO items. So in that publication, we focus on the workshops. So that publication is all the detail on the workshop, but detailed. What was done in the workshops, how long was it? What did we start with? What were teachers expected to do? How was it participatory action research? How participatory was it? So there was a lot of, this publication is about professional development, main focus, the workshops, and of course the focus interviews, but the part of the focus interviews reporting here was on the workshops, the professional development side. Did they feel they developed professionally? So it was not about did learners understand better. This was on professional development. And then we had So we've only had 3 publications. So this last publication was on effective communication of learning intentions and success criteria. So what we looked at in this publication is when South African teachers create a lesson plan, they have to put their learning intentions for the day and their success criteria, what they want to achieve with the lesson. So we wanted to see with the lesson observation, because we also collected lesson observations as part of the data collection techniques. We wanted to see, could they in MERLO, could teachers conceptualize the learning intentions of the day, firstly, and could they successfully communicate the success criteria? So this is the focus of this article, was the lesson plan and how learning intentions and success criteria was communicated. So I was wondering, we have a 4th article under submission. I was wondering if I'm going to put it, but I've not. So yes, so up to date, of course I'm going to conclude now, but up to date, we feel the study has been very successful because not only have we published 3 publications, this first one on how was it used as formative assessment in the class was published in a Web of Science journal, Web of Science accredited. The second one, like I said, this conference last year in the proceedings, which was on professional development, the workshops mostly. And the last one, Pythagoras, that is not Web of Science accredited or Scopus accredited. That was just DOAJ accredited, so not as high-ranking journal, of course. But this article, it was very short because it was only about effective communication about your learning intentions and success criteria. So, I mean, of course, not completely groundbreaking, but we thought worth publishing. Again, because MERLO, it's the first time MERLO was used in South Africa. So we did want to publish this. Okay, so we do have a 4th publication coming out, hopefully soon. But let me not speak to maybe it's not going to be accepted. We hope it will. I'd like to acknowledge my university, our vice principal, for allowing me to give this presentation. And of course, like I said, my doctoral student was a part of this study, Lydia Adesanya. So if you have any questions on the theoretical framework of the paradigm, the more theoretical stuff, I'll let her take care of that. But otherwise, I'll be able to answer anything else. Okay, thank you so much.
So we are opening the session for questions, please, from your side. Professor Rana, we apply MERLO to learn fractions for students to learn and understand fractions. What about the operations with fractions? Summation, multiplication. Here it's obviously more difficult.
That's more difficult.
Yeah, the understanding level is higher. But once the students understood what the meaning of fraction, how to represent the fractions, or how to get a connection between the representation of fractions, will they do a step forwards to make the multiplicate fraction?
I think we have not specifically done that for fractions. But remember, we did MERLO for grade 8, grade 9, the syllabus in South Africa. So I think we touched on maybe on other topics. And the reason might just be for fractions, we didn't have a lot of time in students. But yes, that could be really valuable. And we are looking at doing this in Ghana and Botswana and DRC. So that would be a wonderful contribution for the next step. in how to use MERLO for summation of fractions, multiplication of fractions. Definitely, I think for the next doctoral student, that would be very valuable.
And I have another question, if possible, on this. In Germany, we use fractions in order to model different kinds of set problems. We say text problem, say like that. Students use the term text problem. So they have a text and they have to solve the problem using fractions. That means they have to convert the meaning of text in mathematical model, and then code or do kind of operation with the fractions. Have you done something in this respect?
Yes.
The highest level of fractions.
So what we have done with text, for Q2 for meaning equivalence, some of the MERLO items had text, a description, sort of a story, to express a half. And they had to sort of identify the story and read the text to first identify it's a half being represented by the text, and then to say, well, it's meaning equivalent. So some of the items had some of the text in it.
So this is the highest level of abstraction. If the students have done successfully, then step that means that we succeed in reaching the criteria.
Yes. Okay, thanks for the questions. Yes, one more question in the audience.
Yeah.
Thanks. We apologize for missing the beginning of this great presentation. This was so informative. Thank you. But in the beginning, did you maybe mention how long you were in this program? Was it in the school for those studies? And also, not being quite familiar with South Africa's education system just yet. How old the grade, to say 5 and 9 students are generally?
Okay, let me think how old they are. So we start grade 1 when children are 6.
Thank you.
So we work that out. So when we went into school, South African schooling system starts January to December. December, nothing happens. That's our big holiday because it's summer. So generally, beginning of December until middle January, schools are closed. It's like in the other countries where summer is June, July. They will close June, July. In South Africa, we sort of close December, January. So when schools open in January, when we conduct studies, we are not allowed to go into schools the first quarter. So that's what January, February, a bit of March. We're not allowed to go the last quarter because examinations and summative assessment. So we're not allowed to go November, end of October, November, little bit beginning of December. So I believe this was done around quarter 1, quarter 2. So sort of middle of the year, June, May, June. I think it was more May, June, July. But we had to time it carefully because South African teachers follow CAPS. It's our curriculum. And they have a strict deadline. So visiting schools when they only have, 2 weeks for a specific topic and you're visiting a couple of schools. Lydia, or now she's Dr. Adesanya. Dr. Adesanya had to balance it so carefully that she had to drive, observing a school 10 o'clock in the morning, driving to another school, observing 12 in the afternoon, driving to another school, having a 1 o'clock session. African schools stop around 2 o'clock. We start 7. Yeah. We start around 7 in the mornings and we end around 2 p.m. in the afternoons with formal teaching. 2 to 5 is extracurricular activities. So many times she observed lessons 7:30, drove to school 11:30, drove to school at 1:30. But it was May, June where she observed the classes. I can't remember the number of schools, but with only 5 teachers, I believe it was only 2 schools. And we mentioned convenience sampling. because she selected schools close to her vicinity because she had to drive between schools. So I mean that was, and with the timing we had such a limited time to observe fractions. So it had to be convenient sampling. Of course, purposive sampling, of course. It had to be grade 8, grade 9 teachers. We were looking for teachers with at least 5 years experience as well. So there was the purposive element, but mostly also convenience because of having to drive between schools with half an hour in between classes. So yes, it was, the schedule was tight.
Thank you.
Even successfully, have you thought administrative application about the program and how an administrative application supports your endeavoring measures to implement the programs? Have you really successfully?
Yes, so how it's been received, we obtained ethical clearance from Gauteng Department of Education. So it was only done in one province, also implementation, of course. South Africa has 9 provinces. I live in Gauteng, the University of Pretoria is in Gauteng province, so my student was in Gauteng. So everything was done in Gauteng province. So we only obtained permission from Gauteng Department of Education. But once the study is completed, we have to send all the results. So we did submit the thesis, the 3 articles, as soon as I published the articles, the proceedings of last year's conference. So I have submitted everything, but I've not yet received feedback from their side, which I will follow up. I will definitely follow up. But procedurally, we have to, once the study is completed, send all the results, but I'm hoping they are looking into this. I believe they are because the South African mathematics curriculum is being revamped at the moment. Actually, someone in my university, Prof. Johan Engelbrecht, renowned South African mathematical educator, is running a team looking at the South African mathematics curriculum, and I sent him, of course, all the results. So I'm hoping the head of the recurriculating of maths education within South Africa will take this into cognizance when, looking at the curriculum.